Okay, I had to make sure this was going to be on the right screen. Hi, everybody. Let's see. Okay, looks like we've still got some folks coming in. We'll give folks a minute or two before we get started. Hopefully I've got this all set up right. Okay, well, as folks continue to come in, we're going to go ahead and get started. Just want to introduce myself. I'm Missy Blankenship. I'll be leading our discussion tonight. But before we get into it, I just kind of wanted to take care of some housekeeping type stuff, right? So everybody has been muted as they came in, but I do want this to be a true discussion, so feel free to unmute yourself and speak up at will. But it's also probably a good idea if when you're not speaking, you put yourself on mute, especially if you're like me and have dogs that might want to join in the conversation. That is a fair warning. I've closed the door, but they're still probably going to bark. Let's see. If you don't have a microphone, feel free to use the chat window. I'll try and keep an eye on that. We'll try and keep up with any items there. And if you're not terribly familiar with WebEx, just kind of hang on with this. It works pretty well, and I'm sure you'll catch up. All right. So I'm just checking. We've got quite a few folks here. Again, welcome. If you're just joining us, again, my name is Missy Blankenship. I do teach economics at NCTC. And so obviously I want to start off with a little plug for economics, as a discipline specifically, because most people think that economics is about money. That's usually when you ask people, what is it about? It's about money, or some students, when they come in, they'll say it's about math. They're afraid there's going to be a lot of math. But I think this book really points out that it's not necessarily about money. The authors of Think Like a Freak are both economists, and there wasn't a whole lot of money in there, and there certainly wasn't a whole lot of math. So in fact, the authors describe this book as rules of thinking about solving problems. And they say that we don't actively think a lot of the times, that we're kind of walking around on autopilot. And that really speaks to me, particularly in this, pandemic situation that we're in. You talk about getting the feeling like you're on autopilot, right? So, when I teach my classes, I like to tell my students that economics has more in common with psychology, sociology, and anthropology, those types of courses, than it does with finance and accounting. So it's really more related to the choices we make and why we make them. So I think that really ties in with a lot of what the authors of Think Like a Freak are presenting to us, that it's much more about behavior than anything else. So, and also, while I have your attention, one little plug, because I am the host and I get to do this, I do want to plug, we're having a special section of economics this spring. It's macroeconomics, but it's going to be the economics of music and movies, learn how pop culture affects our global economy. That's going to be an online course. It's Econ 2301, section 350, taught by our own Yvonne Kershey. That's going to be a really fun class. So look for that, students. If you want to have a really great experience, look for that course. It is available for honors credit, but you don't have to be in the honors program to take it. So get signed up for that. So I think that's everything I wanted to cover up front. So I wanted to start off with a question, okay? And the question is, let's see if y'all can get this right. What is the airspeed velocity of an unladen swallow? What do you think? Chime in. Come on, Kevin, you're laughing. Somebody surely has the response to this, right?
I prefer a multiple choice question.
It's been too long. It's been too long.
Okay.
But however fast it wants to fly.
However fast it wants to fly. Okay. This actually is a reference to Monty Python, the Holy Grail. Right?
I have a question.
Yes.
I am down as an administrator. It's me, Pat Ledbetter, and I have no idea how to change it. I just don't want you to think I'm trying to take over. Okay?
Right.
And I'm not a spy. I'm not a spy. It's me. Sorry, interrupt.
That's great. No, my question, what's the airspeed velocity of an unladen swallow, is actually a reference from Monty Python, the Holy Grail. And yes, you're right, Kevin. So if you haven't ever watched that, do yourself a favor and watch it. There's actually a lot of economics in it, but I do have, let me see if I can share my screen, because I have a clip that should hopefully show this, if I can get the right screen here. Okay. All right, let's see if this works.
Who seeks the Holy Grail? What is the airspeed velocity of an unladen swallow? What do you mean, African or European swallow? I don't know that.
Unmute yourself.
Thank you, Kevin. All right, so were y'all not able to hear the video either? Okay, you heard it. Okay.
Yeah, kind of.
Well, whatever. So I think most of us, if we were, being honest and were posed that question.
Are you recording, Missy?
Yes, I'm recording.
Okay.
Most of us would have, even if we had, gotten the information, African or European, we still would have had to say, I don't know. Right? Like the poor man who was guarding the bridge, and we saw what happened to him when he said, I don't know. Right? So this is one of the things that was the most revolutionary to me reading this book, was this chapter about the 3 hardest words in the English language, right? That, we've always heard the 3 hardest words are I love you, but no, it's I don't know, right? And to me, this really hit me, because particularly given that, we have faculty, staff, and students all participating here, I think we can all identify with this, right? I mean, from a faculty perspective, we all love it when we have really engaged students, right? The students who are really engaged, they're critically thinking, that's what they're supposed to be doing, and they're asking the tough questions. I don't know about y'all, but sometimes I get one of those students, and I almost get a knot in the pit of my stomach when their hand goes up, because I'm afraid, okay, is this going to be the time they're going to ask me a question that I don't know the answer to, right? Has anybody else ever experienced that? It's awful, right? And it's like, and I'm sorry, there's my dog's barking. We've come to this idea that we're the subject matter experts, right? We're supposed to know everything, right? And we can't. There's no way. And I'm sure this is in more disciplines, some disciplines more than others. But we've kind of set ourselves up to be these authority figures, and I feel like we're afraid that if we say I don't know, then our students aren't going to see us as that anymore, right? That somehow they'll lose faith in us. And so we hem and haw and stumble around and try and, come up with something. So this is something that I personally have been working a lot on, is, it's being able to say, I don't know, but I'll find out. Or in my discipline, a lot of times we'll be talking about economic data, and students will ask about some particular data point, and that gives me an opportunity to have a data literacy lesson, because I say, I don't know, let's look it up, right? And make use of all that technology that we love to hate, right? That they've all got their phones out. So, okay, you got your phone out, look this up for me, right? But it's still hard. Does anybody else experience that from a faculty standpoint? Like I say, feel free to unmute yourself and talk.
I don't know. I do that all the time, actually. I actually find the best time when I like to relate the story of the couple times I've been to a Michael Burgess town hall meeting, and the one time that somebody asked a question where he actually said, I don't know, I'll have to get back to you. I actually enjoy those the most. I think I've been there twice when he said that,
Wow.
because it's nice to have a stumper every once in a while.
Yeah.
And I applaud the citizen for asking a question and him for answering it that way. But I'm upfront with them. I tell them up front at the beginning that, I don't know everything. And there are times where they do ask questions, and I say, I'm not quite sure. Can somebody look it up on Google or check it? I mean, and I also tell them I'm not that good at math. Even today, I cheated one student 10 points. I handed back tests. I messed up on the 10 points. He brought it up at the end of class. I said, oh, my bad. Gave the 10 points. No biggie. But, so.
Anybody else have any thoughts on that?
I've just never heard those 3 words described as. How did you describe them? The most uncomfortable 3 words in the English language?
The book calls the title of the chapter is the 3 hardest words in the English language.
Whoops! I totally missed that. I didn't remember that at all. It was like it was brand new. So I think that's really cool. I've never. I don't like to say it. I don't like to say I don't.
I feel like even though I'm getting better at it, like you, I don't like to say it.
But I do admire it. I'm like Kevin. I admire it when people just say, and then they don't go on and on and on. I talk about impromptu speaking in my class, and I say, yeah, if you don't know, say, I don't know. And then you can say, I'll get back to you, or let's talk some more after class, or that could be an interesting research topic or something. But a lot of times people will just ramble on and on and on, or we see politicians, I hate to bring up politics, talk about what they do want to talk about, what they do know. So we do really admire people who say, I don't know.
I like it when my students ask me a question I can't answer. It means that they're going further than I've tried to take them. And I use it to teach them the Dunning-Kruger effect. The more you know, you don't know.
Yes, that's something that really occurred to me, that, if you don't admit that you don't know something, then you're not motivated to go and learn it, right? And for us as educators, they also talked a lot about feedback, right? Which I loved, the idea that feedback is how we learn, right? And I always tell my students this. I'm like, the homework is meant to be. It's not just a busy work. It's not just a grade. It's meant it is intended to be a way for you to assess your understanding, get some feedback. Although I'm not sure they're ever listening to me when I tell them that. But I'm just curious. I know we've got some students in here. Does any of the students want to offer up, maybe how you would feel if one of your professors or instructors, admitted they don't know? Does that make you feel better? Does it make you feel worse? Does it change your opinion about your instructor in any way at all? Crickets. This is just like when we ask a question in class, right? And why is this? Because they don't ever want to say, I don't know, right? I can always tell when my students don't know, because they look down, they won't make eye contact, right? So somehow we've also gotten to the point to where our students, there's some sort of stigma attached to it. And the more I think about this, the more I think, how can I foster an atmosphere in my classroom where students aren't afraid to say, I don't know, where they aren't to say, I don't know that, but help me figure it out. Or I don't know that, but I don't know this, help me connect it. Right.
Hello.
I hate that they seem to be afraid to say, I don't know. Right. Because that's good feedback for me and it's good feedback for them. So any other thoughts on that?
Hello.
Hello.
Hi. Sorry, I was gonna answer, but I was trying to find the raise hand button. So,
Oh, you
I
don't have to
couldn't
raise your
find.
hand.
Oh, okay. So I'm LaKendra. I am a student at NCTC. I guess it kind of makes me feel better that that my professors don't know a certain question, just because, we're all not perfect. Even though they're professors, they're more educated than we are. They're not perfect, so it kind of makes us feel. It kind of makes me feel. It kind of makes me feel a little bit better, just because they might, they. It's kind of like the opposite. They're asking us questions and we don't know. Like we don't have any answers yet. It's kind of the same thing for them. We might ask them a certain question that they may not have the answer to. So it's kind of like the other way around. So it kind of makes me feel it kind of makes me feel a little bit better, because we're all human. We're not perfect. We don't know everything.
Yeah. And so I see a comment from Mavis. I'd want my teacher to always know the answer because then I'll have to look for an answer somewhere else. So I guess to the students, maybe am I understanding that it's okay with you if we say we don't know, as long as then we say, but I'll find out, right? Or that leads us to go somewhere else, rather than just throw your hands up, well, I don't know that, right? That's not very.
But what if we're wrong?
Then we admit we're wrong, right? Like we admit that we shorted a student 10 points.
But what if we don't want to admit we're wrong?
But that's hard, right?
It is.
And
But
One thing I try to tell my students is the main thing education is going to do for you is teach you how ignorant you are. Because the more you know you don't know, literally. And there's no easy answers to hard questions. So get used to not knowing and use that as the incentive to go find out more. That's my approach anyway.
Yeah. Let's see here. I've got a whole slew of notes because one thing that Stephen, I will tell you. So if you've ever followed the Freakonomics podcasts, they have fantastic podcasts. And this book was actually published in 2014. So I went back, they had done some relatively short podcasts on some of the topics. So they had a 30-minute podcast on, I don't know. And one of the things that Stephen Levitt said in that podcast, again, going back to the idea of feedback, is there's only one way to learn, and that's through feedback. And then he went on and talked about experimentation and an idea that you experiment, you see what works, and if it doesn't work, you try something else. But he tells a story in the book about working with a company that refused to do that because that would force them to admit that they didn't know the answer to begin with, that they'd been sticking with. And again, I think a lot of times that's maybe something that we and our students also get into is, students are afraid to make a mistake, right? They're afraid to try. Certainly in my discipline, when we have math and things like that to do, they're afraid to try because they're afraid to make a mistake, because if they make a mistake, that tells them they didn't know. So somehow I think it'd be a really good idea for us to normalize not knowing, like you were saying, Pat, that just becomes a part of the process. And I think that could somehow make us as educators and also students a lot more comfortable. I also thought, I know we've got some staff on here as well. And it occurred to me that this may be an issue for staff too. I mean, of course, now y'all probably do have all the answers. But, but is anybody on here that's staff that has ever had an experience where a student or somebody was coming to you for help and you didn't know the answer and you had to go through this? Maybe not.
Well, yeah. I mean, I didn't know the answer to their question, but I knew sort of how to help them. But I mean, it was kind of jarring, but I had a student come to me. It was his 18th birthday, and his parents came to him and said, "Get the hell out."
Ooh.
And he didn't see it coming. And so I didn't know what the hell to do other than took him over to a counselor.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that was the best I could do, really. I had no real answers or solutions other than that. Needless to say, he didn't really come back to class because he had way other things that he had to worry about besides class. So, wished him the best because I knew he probably wouldn't be back because, still. But I kind of use that example from time to time. Not him, but I use that example when I talk about freeing the slaves. And I always say, well, what would you do if your parents met you at the door when you came home from class today and said, "Here are 2 suitcases, it's got all your stuff in it. We're going to set you free. Have a nice life. Let us know how you do. And bye. Give us your key. You're free." That's kind of what they did to him. I've used that example, and I've never really expected that to happen, but it did. I didn't know what to do other than.
Yeah.
This has me thinking, though. I find myself saying I don't know to sort of procedure questions when students ask me questions, well, how do I, when I get my financial aid approved, what do I do next? And, those sort of college process questions or about registration or advising. I'm like, oh, I don't know. I'll have to find out. And I feel it's very humbling, but it's good for me to be asked those questions because these are things I feel like I should know. And I feel kind of embarrassed sometimes when I say I don't know, but I also am glad that the student asked because that way otherwise they just may sit back and never get their question asked and they may not go to class anymore or not register for the next semester. So it's good for them to get the information, but it's also good for me to know the information while also being very embarrassing that I don't know the answers to some of those very basic questions.
Yeah, that's happened to me a lot when students ask me questions about how do I get my transcript or how do I register, how do I do this, how do I do that. And I'm like you, Kristen. I'm kind of embarrassed that I don't know the answers to that. But I'm also at the same time very grateful that at least on my campus, we have some staff right downstairs and I can actually walk them down there and say, "Here, please help." But yeah, there's all that sense inside of me. It's like, I could be more help to my students if I knew that.
I think on the reverse side, I've lost respect for people that I know who refuse to say I don't know and stick by the incorrect answer when everybody but will just that's their story and they're sticking to it. And I've really lost respect for them and I myself as a student for people who were instructing me. So I think it's really important as instructors to admit it when you don't know. It's it doesn't have to be shameful, and it's a good opportunity to show, well, here's how I'm going to search for that answer. So yeah.
Oh, I love that, Cindy. A comfortable rut. I can identify with that. The idea of getting in a comfortable rut. Oh, okay. Let's see, what else do we have here? So one of the other things I talked about in this podcast that I listened to, sorry, there goes my dog again, was about how important it is to create a culture where it's okay to say, I don't know. And it talked about how that starts at the top. So that's my lovely little corgi mix. She barks a lot. The idea that all the way down, that it should be okay for us to say, I don't know. It should be okay for our students to say, I don't know. And as we go through that process, then
So why is your dog barking so much?
Probably
Here's your chance.
It's probably, I do know the answer to this, it's probably the neighbor's cat that sits out in our front flower bed and she looks out the window. And,
Perfect opportunity to say, I don't know. Come on.
well, I don't know for sure, but I'm about 95% sure. How about that? Okay. So that was the thing that really kind of struck me and really hit me in my core. There's lots of different topics in this, but does anybody else have something else that really you feel like that hit you?
I like the section on I quit. I'm quitting.
That's a good one. Yes, that's a real good one. In economics, we think a lot about sunk costs and about opportunity costs, and so I think it makes more sense to us. But I think we've all probably had situations where, we probably hung on to something too long, right? And I identified with this because I think I've probably had some students who hung on too long, right? Who kept asking, well, could I still make a B, or if I do this, and and they just keep hanging on and hanging on and hanging on when they're really not. They're either not getting it or they're not able to really put into it what they need to succeed, like in terms of time. But it's difficult, isn't it?
I just think it's ingrained from the time, we're taught all of these idioms about, I think they said quitters never win, winners never quit. And but they had another way of saying it, as I can't remember what their way of saying it was. And so we're taught that as kids to never give up. And maybe they even quote Churchill on that, never, ever, ever give up. But there are times to give up. Yeah. I mean, my first nursing job, I should have quit way before I did. It was awful. It was a nightmare. I can think of many, and I think I see that with our students too. Sometimes they think that I think a lot of times it happens at the college level. I think it's something that we should be aware of and very familiar with, is that it doesn't mean they have to quit college, but maybe they need to quit their dream of whatever. If they thought they wanted to be a nurse, or they thought they wanted to be a veterinarian or a dentist or whatever, that if they can't do these certain things, then it is a good idea to quit trying to do those things, because there's something better out there for you.
Okay, I think my dog stopped barking for a minute. So what other? I think that's a really good point, Jill. That's kind of something that society has impressed upon us. And I heard it from my parents. That was something that you teach your kids. And that's why you put them in sports and stuff. Don't quit, don't quit, don't quit. But again, I always tell my students, I'm the poster child for changing your major, because I started college as a vocal performance music major, and came out with a degree. Came out with a degree in economics, but that required me to quit something. It required me to say, this is not for me, and it was that I didn't like to practice enough. Being a music major requires an awful lot of practice. But that required me to quit, and I had to have a very hard conversation with my father, who had holding the purse strings. I still ended up graduating a semester early, but like you say, it's not just necessarily quitting college, but it's changing your path. Anytime you make a change, anytime you make a choice, there's something that's not chosen. There's something that's given up. We call it opportunity cost in economics. But you're effectively, when you're changing your major, you're effectively quitting on something. But you're right, you're really going in a different direction. But I think sometimes students get so far down a path, and we've got these pathways now, right? They get so far down a path that even if they start to feel like this really isn't for me, they feel like they've got that whole sunk cost thing going. I've spent too much time in this. I can't go back now. And yet, if it's not what they're really supposed to be doing, then they're probably not doing very well. And I wonder if there's a way that we can help our students to see that without coming across as sounding very negative, right? You're no good at this. You need to go try something else, right?
Hello.
Oh no, poster child for second chances. I've tried lots of things, failed, and always did it the second time. But I was a music major too. I was in orchestra in high school. I figured out my junior year that this wasn't for me, and finally told them sorry, my senior year I'm not going to do it. So I got out early. I didn't have to figure it out in college like you did. So.
Wow. LaKendra, did you have something to add?
Yes. So I graduated from high school 2 years ago in 2019, and I wanted to be an orientation and mobility instructor, which is teaching blind and visually impaired people how to travel safely and independently within their communities. And right after I graduated, I attended a blindness training center called Chris Cole Rehabilitation Center in Austin. And I had to do O&M training under the blindfold, which was very intimidating. And I've been told, well, if you want to be an orientation mobility instructor, you're going to have to travel under blindfold a lot because, you know, whenever you do your internship and whenever you do your O&M certification, you're going to have to travel under blindfold. And there are times where I've had to travel under blindfold. There are times where I've done well, but there, certain areas where, like, especially outdoor traveling isn't my best because it kind of scares me traveling under blindfold because, I'm not completely blind, but I am legally blind, so I do have some vision. So I'm used to using my vision more. So I'm good traveling with my vision, but non-visually, there's some areas where I struggle. And so it's just that fear. I had a really hard time overcoming my fear being under the blindfold. So, I had to sit down with my instructor and he was telling me, do you really want to be an O&M instructor? And I was like, well, I'm not so sure anymore. Because, and he was telling me, he was like, well, he was like, well, you just graduated high school and you're still young, you still have time to explore. So it's like, maybe if maybe O&M isn't something it's okay to change your major. It's, if you're not, it's just a matter of exploring. So I did some exploring. I actually did a PowerPoint presentation over the anatomy of the human eye. So, and I was been told by my friends, well, maybe you should become a low vision specialist because every time you talk about the eye, you get very excited, which I do. And so that's what made me, now I'm working on my basics here at NCTC, and in the summer, I'll be transferring to UNT to become a low vision specialist. So, quitting O&M is, it was a little difficult, but, I guess maybe that wasn't my true calling.
So it sounds like you were able to sit down with your instructor and they gave you, positive direction rather than just saying, well, this isn't for you. So maybe that's, what we can keep in mind as instructors, to be thinking about how to redirect our students. But Kristen, I think you had a great point though. It has become harder with higher tuition, right? And that makes that sunk cost feel a lot heavier. That if you've paid your tuition and you've taken all these courses, and then you're looking at well, this one won't transfer and this one won't transfer. And Kevin, I think you mentioned limits on numbers of courses you can take, and this whole idea that we should be graduating all these students in a certain number of years. To me, that's kind of limiting the opportunity for exploration, and we keep pushing this back earlier and earlier that students are supposed to now choose what they want to do when they're in middle school. That's crazy to me, but
It was the old professional student from way back who used to take course after course after course just to take it that ruined it for the rest of us.
Yeah. Benjamin said, how much of the never quit ethos is designed to create a sense of diligence and moxie?
Yeah, let's push button.
That's a good point. I mean, we need to be diligent, but I think it's about, oh, that was you. Oh, I'm sorry, Kevin. I'm reading my chat here. But yeah, it's one thing to be diligent, but oh, that was professional student, I guess. Okay. But so maybe we can help our students recognize when it's no longer just being diligent, and help them find their new path. But yeah, there's lots of different ways that you can approach this, the idea of quitting, and it is very difficult. Okay, let's see, what else did I notes I have on that? Anything else? Any other thoughts anybody had on quitting? Any other experiences that you've had? Anybody find it easy to quit things? Right. Again, cricket.
I don't know. It depends on how good or bad it is. I mean, like you said, if you put a lot of time and effort into it, it's hard sometimes. But if you don't like what you're doing, then no, it's like I find it easy to quit running or walking or exercising in general. But other than that,
I have trouble quitting on technology. Kevin, I know you said something earlier about technology. If I'm trying to learn something new, and if it's just not working out, I have trouble quitting on it. I keep trying to force myself, and
I agree with that.
I think that's a good quality. I wish I had that quality. No, I give up very easily. I'm getting better. I'm better at it now than I was in years past. Because just from working with students, and I had a really good student worker one time, and I saw how he would just Google how to do things. I mean, I thought he was so good at technology. A lot of times you see IT people or technology people Google it. We have so many resources now. And so I'm less likely to give up now. But I think at my core, I'm someone who would give up on technology very easily. I think that's yeah.
My motto is, if first you don't succeed, call IT.
Oh, Kristen, I'm with you on that. I have one book I have ever not finished. And it was something my husband had read and told me to read, and I had to put it down. I'm like, no, this is bad.
I have to finish if I read to page 75. I can quit before 75, but if I get to page 75, I have to finish it no matter what. So that's my tactic.
Okay, that's a good way to look at it. What else? Let's see, I have a list of questions. Let's see what else we can talk about. What about the hot dog eater? What did you think about Kobayashi the hot dog eater? That was really interesting. Did you check? Let me check the that he wasn't. He didn't think about how many hot dogs to eat. He thought about how to make eating hot dogs easier. So he was able to achieve something just because he reframed the question, which I think is something that in my discipline I could certainly think about more, because a lot of times I know students know the answer, but they're not able to give it to me, and maybe it's just the way that I'm framing the question. If I can help them think about it in a slightly different way, then they might immediately get it. It's about he used scientific method, about looking at it from a slightly different way. And okay, the corresponding story, David Lee Roth. Did y'all catch that about the brown M&Ms? Okay. I will admit something. I'm not sure any of my current students are in this class, but are on this WebEx. But if anybody who's here takes my class in a future semester, I kind of do a very similar thing. I hide little Easter eggs in my syllabus, in my course introduction, and I tell them, you know, right in the middle of a paragraph that has absolutely nothing to do with it, I'll say, for an extra credit point, send me a picture of a duck. And that tells me, they think, ooh, it's extra credit, but that tells me who's actually reading. So, oh, there goes my dog again. I really related to the brown M&Ms.
He wants the extra credit.
Yeah, yeah. Let's see. Oh, another good question. Who wants to talk about transfusions? Remember that? They talked about the harvesting the bacteria, and they discovered kind of by accident that there was a certain bacteria that was associated with ulcers, and they figured out how to cure it, but it was a transfusion, but with a different, you know. So
Really,
anybody have ulcers?
the really scary part is I kind of knew about that before they started talking about it, because it was on Grey's Anatomy, which my wife watches, and now I watch too.
Yes, absolutely.
There's actually a documentary, I forget which one, but there's actually a documentary where they show all these people who are doing it too. It's really gross.
Mm-hmm. But, you know, of course, the interesting thing, you know, it's gross, but again, the idea of how they, you know, got there was somebody challenging the known, right? They said, oh no, bacteria can't live. And yet somebody who kind of ignored that found that they could, and that set in this whole thing in motion. So I think, was that in the chapter about thinking like a child? I really like that one too. The idea that, and I see this with a lot of my students, I think they feel like, I feel like they overthink a lot of the questions because they're coming in with a lot of these preconceived notions and preconceived ideas. And so they come at it with that perspective already, and as opposed to children who, because they haven't lived as long and they haven't been exposed to all these things, they are able to look at things in a simpler way. I just thought that was fascinating. The whole idea about the magician, right? They had a magician do a show for kids, and a magician do right for adults. And we as adults are a lot harder, or a lot easier to fool, because we, you know, hone in on one thing. It's the distractor, right? But the kids, they don't do that. They're kind of all over the place, and so they notice things that we as adults don't notice. And so it was interesting to me to think about, you know, how could I kind of step back? You know, it's the idea of seeing the forest for the trees, right? But the trees are part of the forest. You wouldn't have the forest without the trees. So the idea of looking at things from a different perspective, the thinking like a child, and also thinking small. To me, those two kind of went together, right? And the thing that I thought of when I was reading the Thinking Small chapter was the old joke that says, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time, right? In little pieces. So, you know, that really connected with me, because with economics, well, that's kind of how we have to take it, one little step at a time, and put the whole piece back together. But there was, let's see, oh, I have a joke for you, and this is kind of related to both these things. And this, I got off of Twitter today, and it was an economist who, he's written a textbook, and he's, you know, done all sorts of things. He says, a student asked him this joke in class today. Can you name a mouse that walks on two legs? Can anybody name a mouse that walks on two legs?
Mickey Mouse?
Mickey Mouse, yeah.
Can you name a duck that walks on two legs?
All duck.
Silly, all ducks walk on two legs. But okay, but you see what happens?
Yeah.
The first question brought your focus in and allowed you to miss the bigger picture. And that's what kids don't do. They don't focus in as much. They're able to continue to see the big picture. Right? And well,
I don't know.
You don't know? Yeah.
I don't know. Oh, no, sorry. I quit.
But it was interesting, Kevin, because he's posted this to Twitter, and then he posed the idea is this what a lot of the political talk is about? That you start off with something that's going to narrow your focus, right? And then you're kind of hooked in there. But most ducks don't have names. Well, yeah. I will say, but one time a student, when I asked them to send me a picture of a duck, they sent me a picture of a duck. I don't know where she found this, and the duck had money in its bill. It was perfect. Perfect for economics. All right. I'm watching the time here because, you know, nothing should go over an hour, and it's bachelorette night. So, okay, let's see. Oh, one other thing that we look at a lot in economics was incentives. How easy is it to determine someone's true incentives?
I like that when they were talked about paying kids for grades. And if they could pay kids $5,000 for an A, the number of honor students would soar.
Yeah, let's write a grant, right?
Yeah.
But that's something we talk a lot about in economics, and Mike is referring to that in the chat. The idea of we talk about revealed preference, that you almost have to trick people into showing you what their real preferences are, and that's kind of a lot of what I think is what thinking like a freak is about. That idea of really getting people to reveal maybe what they don't even realize they're thinking, right? The idea that if you ask us, you know, to choose between something that's good for society or just good for us, because we talk a lot about this in economics with the ideas of externalities. Well, we're going to say the right thing, right? The right thing being what's, you know, good for the group. But again, in practice, what we find is most of us will do what's best for us, and those two things don't always line up. But so, again, I think when you're trying to make a connection with somebody, that can become important, right? You know, kind of figuring out how they're thinking and kind of getting them to reveal themselves. You know, like the students who, I have a student who is constantly emailing and asking for extra credit. And, you know, finally got her to reveal that she's, you know, very concerned about her GPA and you know, so, but it took a while to get around to that, because sometimes students will ask for extra credit just because, you know, they don't want to, they've missed some work and they're just trying to make it up. But I knew, you know, she had a good grade. And so it took me a while to kind of get her around that and asking a bunch of leading questions, right, to get her to reveal what was actually going on. And I think we do have to do that sometimes with our students, to find out what motivates them, right? Because some students are motivated by very different things. So incentives are are interesting to me. What else? I've been doing most of the talking. That wasn't the intent. Did you like the book?
Loved it. I really liked Why You Should Tell Stories on how to persuade people. I think as an instructor, that, you know, the things I want to stick with people, if I just spit it out there in little facts, it doesn't stick for most students. But if it's told in a story, and I think back on the things that I've learned and that have stuck with me, those are the things that really will stick with them. And I know it's from discipline to discipline, it's different. But I mean, if you can do it in economics, you can certainly do it in other areas. So I really enjoyed that whole how to persuade people chapter of the book.
Yeah, bless his heart. My husband is the subject of a lot of stories. I teach that way a lot.
I found out that when I meet students that I've had years ago, they don't remember the presidents and the elections and so forth. They just remember the corny stories I told. And I think, really? Does that mean? What does that mean?
I've tried to teach, I've started trying to teach, I've tried several times to teach persuasive speaking through the telling of stories. And I've tried to get students just to even pick a TED Talk and just retell the story that the TED Talk speaker is telling. And they struggle so much with it. But I've really tried to incorporate it because we know that good speakers and memorable public speakers are good storytellers. But I definitely think it's an art we're losing because when I was growing up, we would have people over to our house to eat dinner, and then we would go sit in the living room, and my mother would tell stories, and then we would sit around and tell stories. And I don't think people do that anymore. I don't.
Well,
People are not storytellers.
I grew up without television, and so we told stories. My grandfather he was the world's best storyteller, and my mother was she could tell a story, stem yarn they called it, and I think our students don't have that part because they're used to being told stories too, not telling the stories.
That's true. Well, if any of you have read the other books, I have quite a collection, right? Freakonomics and Super Freakonomics. That's the way these books are written. They're just a collection of stories, but those stories illustrate different economic concepts. And that's why I think they're so popular. And that's why I think, again, if you haven't ever listened to their podcasts, they're so fun to listen to. They did one where they traced, it was the story of a pencil. They traced the pencil from the very beginning, like the tree growing and the carbon being mined and all the different steps to going through to create a pencil and how it traveled all around the world. And they're just, but you're enthralled because they're storytellers. And you're right. That's the things that students will remember. Be it corny or not, they'll remember the stories. So, well, like I say, we're getting close to time. Anybody have any other thoughts about the book? Ridiculous stories teach grammar rules. That sounds good to me. I always had. Oh yeah, Zappos. Yeah, I think I would like to work for Zappos too. Anything else? Well, I do want to thank you all for joining us and participating this first time. We were just trying to figure out how to make this work. I would also like to thank Jill Swerner for helping us out with the having the honors program sponsor this and providing some books for some folks. This has been a lot of fun preparing for this and putting this together. Because I love economics and I love this sort of stuff. So I will say that we intend to continue this. This is NCTC Reads. So we would like to do this every semester. So we're looking for suggestions for a book for next semester and possibly a volunteer to lead the discussion, right? So if anybody has any ideas for us or wants to volunteer, please feel free to email Jill. I'll put that on Jill's plate and let us know. But it's a great thing that we can take advantage of WebEx, right, in our current situation and gather people rather than having to worry about having it on one campus or another and somebody can't get there and so forth and so on. So, I think this was a really good time to try this. And next time we may be able to set it up a little bit better on WebEx. We'll figure it out.
This is perfect. Thank you, Missy. Enjoy this.
Well, thank you all so much. And everybody have a good evening and enjoy the Bachelorette.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you